Hello, welcome to my channel, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. Welcome back if you have subscribed and tune in on a regular basis. Tonight or today, whatever the case might be for you, if you're watching this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the events over the last week of Portland and the riots there, and a little bit about Kenosha. This isn't an easy topic. It's not fun for me. A man lost his life in the last 24 hours at the hands of law enforcement. And for lack of better terminology, justice was done. What needed to happen, happened. And I'm going to juxtapose that with the events of Kenosha, Wisconsin, where a young man, took the lives of two of his assailants in Kenosha last week, and rightly so, according to many people. Having watched the video of the events in Kenosha, I would tell you that the young man in Kenosha, who has been accused of mass murder, appears to have a very solid defense for self-defense. On the other hand, last Saturday, a man took the life of another man, and did so apparently without provocation, for no other reason than the fact that the man was wearing a pro-law enforcement badge on his clothing and apparently belonged to a pro-President Trump organization. That organization being the Patriot Prayer Group, that has been labeled a right-wing extremist, white supremacist terrorist group by the Southern Poverty Law Association. So the man who took that young man's life, Aaron Jay Danielson, is the one who died last week. And I would like to say his name. Say his name. The man, and I'm not going to name him in this video, the man who took Andrew's life last week in Portland was a proud member of Antifa. Proud. I mean, he announced very vocally, very vociferously that he is Antifa for life, 100% Antifa. And it would seem odd to many people to say, well, gosh, how can you be against anything that is against fascism, Todd? And I'm not against groups that are against fascism. I'm against groups that pretend to be against fascism while they, for lack of better terminology, endorse authoritarianism. See, Antifa is not just simply an anti-fascist organization. It is an authoritarian Marxist communist organization. And they oppose fascism because they're in competition with one another. And so this man, who was guilty by all intents, or by all accounts and by all intents and purposes, guilty of murdering another man for the crime of being pro-law enforcement, pro-Donald Trump. This man considered himself to be embroiled in and enmeshed in a war. These are his own words. This was a war, and he is happy about that. He was happy about the fact that he was engaged in a war, and he was willing to do what needed to be done. And that's what war is. I mean, let's be honest. War is not a pretty, picturesque stroll through the park in a Norman Rockwell type setting or in a Thomas Kincaid type setting. War is ugly. It's nasty. And this man was happy to be engaged in that war. And worse still, the media outlet Vice interviewed this man, gave him a voice, and let him disparage his victim, saying that he had to take his victim's life because his victim was going to victimize him and another person. And the irony of all of this is that while this is going on, the young man from Kenosha, who has been charged with murder, who is facing the potential of a death sentence, has been labeled a mass murderer by Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and Twitter. And anybody who supports this young man in the Kenosha incident is being censored, being shut down. Anybody who says anything positive or in support of the Kyle Rittenhour is being warned to not speak out by these media platforms. Yet Vice comes in and interviews this man who murdered another human being because of their political position in Portland last Saturday. And Vice is interviewing him and giving him a voice to attack his victim and say this guy was evil, he was going to kill a person of color, and I did what I had to do to protect my friends. Now, I'm all for that. I'm all for protecting your neighbor. I'm all for protecting your family. I'm all for protecting your own life. What I'm not for is murdering people based on their political position. And all of these media outlets, the mainstream media, the legacy media, for the most part, are defending this criminal thug, this man from the Portland scenario, from the Portland situation, who has been charged with driving under the influence. He's was arrested with a firearm that he was not legally allowed to have, and we can get into the constitutionality of all of that at a different time. But he was a thug. He is a terrorist. He belongs to a terrorist organization. Antifa is a terrorist organization. And this man proudly announced that he was engaged in warfare, proudly announced his affiliation with Antifa. And he murders another human being because that human being dares to be pro-law enforcement. And the media just lets it all hang out there. Facebook, Twitter, censors anyone supporting Kyle Rittenhour from the Kenosha incident. Shuts him down. But this man receives a pass. This man is allowed to disparage his victim because he's taking the right position in the eyes of society and culture today. American people, if you don't think that you're in the middle of a war, if you don't think that right now we are not in a cultural minefield, if you don't think that this is a war against traditional American values, you are a blithering idiot. If you're going along to get along because you don't have the stomach for confrontation, if you're going along and you're closing your eyes to all of this that's happening around you, you deserve everything that happens to you from this point forward. You have got to be willing to fight. And I know the word fight is so hard for people to stomach. But stop being cowards. Stop bowing to the media. Stop bowing to the narrative of culture right now. And start pushing back. Start fighting back. Because if you don't, they're going to come for you. And if you think this is going to be reserved for large cities like Portland and Seattle and Chicago and New York and Miami and other places, you are completely gone. You're an idiot. You're a moron. Because sooner or later, they're coming to the small towns. They're coming to the rural communities. That's how war is. You are in a war right now. And sure, for the most part, it's not a hot war. It's kind of a cold war. It's a war of words. It's a war of philosophy. It's a war of worldviews. But it is going to turn into more and more and more violence. This is going to become the norm. And you have got to be ready. You have got to be concerned with your own safety. Because if you dare fly an American flag, if you dare speak out in defense of law enforcement, if you dare express support for President Trump, you will be attacked. You will be lambasted. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your income. You're going to lose your home for nothing more than not taking the right position right now. This is a war. And you're losing it because you're afraid of confrontation. And that's what groups like Antifa and the other Marxist organizations that are out there, the Democrat Party, they're counting on you not having the stomach for a fight. And right now, if you aren't willing to engage in a war of words, you will be a victim of a war of violence. You need to wake up and realize that before it's too late.